I do feel very strongly that, especially sisters in the community, we need to stop normalizing the extreme emotional response that some sisters have when their husband marries again.
Assalamu alaikum, peace. It's Coach Nyla.
Assalamu alaikum, peace. It's Coach Fatimah.
And we are co-wives, co-founders of Outstanding Personal Relationships, as well as co-authors of the book,
Let's Talk Polygyny Uncensored.
And we are super excited today because we are going to have a wonderful, amazing conversation with our wonderful friend who is author, not just author, but founder of Sisters Magazine, amazing author of a bunch of books, including children's books, and just doing so much for the women and the sisters in the community. So we are extremely excited to have an important conversation on marriage, womanhood, as well as polygyny with none other than our wonderful sister, Naima B. Robert.
Assalamu alaikum, sisters. Jazakallah khairan for having me.
Welcome, 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 sis. We're so excited. We're so happy to have you on our platform once again. Everybody loves it when we work together. Yes. I think it's great. MashaAllah, I'm so excited. So I'm gonna let my co-wife, I'm gonna shut up.
No.
She's like, keep talking, keep talking.
Assalamualaikum once again. Alhamdulillah, so great to have you on there. So yes, on there, one way. But yes, I'm excited to get your thoughts and just have this conversation on marriage, polygyny, and just womanhood in general, and being a woman in just a lot of different things, right? So just womanhood, marriage, and polygyny. That's pretty much the main thing that we'll be discussing today. So I'd love to get your feedback on it and your ideas about it, because you are an advocate for polygyny. Well, I look at you as an advocate.
Am I a poly ally?
So it's really good to have that because you do not practice polygyny though, right?
Yani.
She's like,
because my
that wasn't on the set of questions. Hello.
So we're gonna start right into it.
I mean, the thing is, the thing is that if I may jump in, right? The thing is, everybody, I find that in our space in general, everybody's ideas are formed by not only what they've learned, right, but by their experiences, their life experiences. And in my life, I've not only had, experience in, polygamous situations, but I have very good friends in long-term stable polygamous situations, right? Have I seen polygamy done wrong and crazy? Yes, I have. But more than that, I've seen, some of my best friends are in polygamy. Some of my children's, childhood friends have grown up in that kind of scenario. So that really informs my own, the way that I speak about it and the way that I see it. And you'll find that that's the case with a lot of people, especially those who are anti, is their only experience of it is either a crazy example or crazy examples or just hearsay, right? Because in the community, our cultural narrative is that polygamy is messy, hurts feelings, it hurts people, it breaks families. You know what I mean? So it's one of those stereotypes that as a Muslim society or community we've kind of embraced. But what we're trying to do now is really to shake up the narrative and invite people to consider the fact that your feelings about this have been shaped by the society that you're in, and any potential negative examples that you've had experience of, not necessarily the haqq, not necessarily how it really is, but your perception and what you've heard and what the people around you say. So it's something worth looking out for and being aware of so that you can have a more balanced view moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Love it. I love it. So I love that, because we have different people who don't practice polygyny, who have not practiced it, probably weren't even looking or even thinking about it. I said, well, you have some that say to each his own. If you like it, I love it. I'm not going to go either way and say, you're bad for that or it's wrong for that or anything like that. They may even say, I may not like it for me, but I support you in what you do. And then you have others that says, it's, degrading, or, the women go to this, and it goes into, like you stated, shaping our viewpoint and our thoughts. I found that when we started really coming out with our platform and what we do, that people started seeing it in a different way. Right. And people were like, I didn't notice that. I didn't realize it was that way. Oh, you're opening my eyes to a lot of these different things, which is a great thing. So one of the things we talk about a lot at OPR is that we're not anti-monogamy. Right. We're pro-morals. Exactly. So that's the thing. What things about marriage, because that's what we mean by that. We're pro-moral, so we're meaning that be married, procreate in marriage, these type of things like that. What benefit do you see in marriage as a whole, like for society in general?
Oh gosh, we could have like a whole 2-hour conversation on this. But something that Coach Nazir said on one of our previous podcasts really stood out to me, and that was he was kind of leaning into the idea that people see polygamous marriages or polygynous marriages as problematic. And he pushed back and he said the divorce rate is over 50%. There are people in monogamous marriages who are unhappy, who face challenges, who go through difficult times, right? But we don't problematize monogamy. We don't problematize, or we don't blame the monogamy for that, right? So why in polygamous situations do we blame the polygyny situation for that? So, in terms of marriage, there's, so many benefits on the emotional, spiritual, physical, financial, social, cultural, levels. But it's something that in the society that we live in today, pushing for or being for any form of a traditional marriage, and I'm going to say this specifically, any form of a traditional marriage where the spouses play more or less traditional roles is going to be problematized, because we live in a time where tradition is the problem, right? Tradition is the problem. The way things were done before is a problem. So polygamy is a problem, but polyamory is perfectly fine, right? Poly and open relationships, perfectly fine. In fact, cool. Right? Avant-garde, it shows how progressive you are, shows how free and liberated you are, shows how much trust you have with your spouse, and all of this nonsense that they say, right? But polygamy, because it's one man, or polygyny, because it's one man and several women, and he's the head of the home, this is a problem, right? So if I truly, truly believe that all over the world, people are facing issues in their communities, right? And we have so much work to do on ourselves as individuals. But if we do want to see a change in the next generation, it will start with, after ourselves, establishing stable relationships, right? Stable marriages where people have the safe space to thrive spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, socially, culturally, right? That's what marriage does. Marriage is that safe space for individuals to be able to grow, to learn, to make mistakes. And that's what children need. That's what children need. Because I don't care about us, because we've lived, okay? Like we've lived, we can do whatever we want to do. But it's the next generation coming up that we need to prioritize, right? That whose needs we need to prioritize, and who we are actively teaching with every decision that we make, right? We are teaching them what is important. We are teaching them what to value. We are teaching them how to respond. And that's where I'm asking us to be more intentional as Muslims. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed polygyny, and the thing is, it's so funny to me how people do mental gymnastics around anything that they don't like personally. You'll have people explaining almost every aspect of Sharia away because of a personal preference, right? So, and the thing is, maybe, Allahu Alam, maybe it is a difference of opinion amongst the scholars, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said have, 2, 3, or 4, but if you cannot be just, then have one. And people say, but he can never be just. So halas, Allah's actually saying, just have one, right? So it's like, so why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala go to the trouble of saying marry 2, 3, or 4? Right? If he was just going to nullify all of that and say, well, I made you, I created you, you're insan, you're never going to be able to be fair, you just get one mate, right? So it's the mental gymnastics. But for me, it's more a case of, why are you doing those mental gymnastics? What is the reason, right? For many sisters, and we know this, for many sisters, and I've been there, and majority of people are there, for many sisters, being anti-polygyny or interpreting, evidences, etc., in a way that nullifies polygyny, to say it's not relevant today, it was for those times, it was for widows from war, for example, it's only for, if you need to do X, Y, Z, blah, 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 all of these limitations, right? Putting limitations on the institution of polygyny comes from that place of first wife privilege, which we've talked about, right? It's a form of mate guarding. It's a form of mate guarding. It's a form of resources guarding, right? It's a form of status guarding, because we know the fact of the matter is most singular wives, most first wives do not want to share. That's a fact. They don't want to share the love. They don't want to share the body. They don't want to share the resources. They don't want to share the time. They don't want that. So it's almost a self-preservation to be in that mode of, well, it doesn't apply. Well, he couldn't do it anyway because of X, Y, and Z. All of the excuses and the kind of, like I said, the justifications for why this is not an option for my husband. Like, anybody else can do what they want, but no, don't be bringing that stuff here. It is that form of mate guarding. As long as you're honest, sis, fine. But be honest. Be honest and say, I don't want this for me, because what I want for my family is not that, it's this, right? And then you can have an honest conversation, and then maybe you need to have an honest conversation with your husband, because it's clear that he does want it for his family, right? So you guys may need to have some kind of discussion here. But as a society, because majority of women who are married are only wives, that is the dominant position. That is that's like the voice of privilege speaking, if you like, if we're going to put it in those terms. So it's no surprise really that most of our communities are anti, because the women in those situations do not welcome it. And if they could choose, they would not allow it and they would not have it. So, there's unpacking to be done, because the crazy thing is, many women who find themselves in situations where polygyny now is a real option, or is sometimes one of the only viable options, they were once only wives. They were once first wives who had exactly the same mindset. No, not for me. Not in my house. I don't want that, right? It's when the shoe is on the other foot and you realize you're not in that position of privilege anymore, and you kind of need this, then you're like, whoa, okay, so that's where I was coming from. That's where my mindset was. And this is what it feels like to be on the other side of that mindset. This is what it feels like to be in the, I'm not going to say the marginalized group. I don't want to use that kind of language, but this is what it feels like not to be part of the privileged first wives club or the privileged only wives club. Now I see it differently, which is normal, Yani. It's human beings. I'm rattling on.
I love it. You said a number of things that I was thinking as you were speaking. A couple of things when it came to when you started talking about like the children, because now when we're talking about the children, we're talking about people who are. It's not just a man. It's not just a woman. It's not just the benefit of this person or that person. We're looking now past our own individual thinking. So what do you see besides that, the benefits that polygyny can actually bring that's outside of just these individual benefits that people see as, oh, what's the benefit for the wife, or the benefit for the woman, or is the benefit for the husband? And usually they lean more towards it's the more benefit for the husband than it is for the wife. But kind of just getting that narrative out of the way and say, well, what about society as a whole? Or what about the children? What about people or something bigger than us as individuals?
You know, I really believe that we should be pushing for stable homes, whatever that looks like within the Sharia, right? Healthy, stable homes, whatever that looks like within the Sharia. So if it's a nuclear family setup that's healthy, yes to that. If it's a polygynous family setup that's healthy, yes to that. If it's a multi-generational family setup that's healthy, yes to that. It's not, the issue is not the institutions. The issue is the human beings within those institutions, right? For example, living with in-laws, right? Or having like extended family structures and being in that space. We have problematized that as well, by the way. If you've noticed, that's at the moment, it's like a no-no. I will never accept that. I would never live with my in-laws, you know, all of this kind of thing. And there were benefits to that system, just like there are benefits to the polygynous system, right? There are also drawbacks to the nuclear family system, but we love that, right? We will accept the negatives that come with a one, you know, the husband, wife, and kids in one house situation, but we overlook the negatives and we overlook the challenges because we've been taught that that's the ideal, right? So we are prepared to sacrifice for an ideal. We believe that one man, one woman in their house with their kids is the ideal, so we'll sacrifice for that. Every other situation is not ideal. So we don't have to sacrifice for that. And we shouldn't have to sacrifice for that. And in fact, we should get rid of those anyway, because it should all be husband, wife, and their kids in a house. But if you look at society and you look at the change of our cultures and just the sociology aspect of it, right? There are benefits in a healthy multi-generational family setup. There are many benefits actually of living around family. There are many benefits of having different generations of a family in a home space, right? There are benefits to having your husband away from you for part of the week. There are benefits for being able to look after more than one woman, right? There are benefits in all situations if the human beings involved obey Allah's commands and they themselves are healthy, right? If we're healthy or if we're trying to be healthy, we can make any situation work. So going back to your question about the children, right? Children growing up in any of these scenarios where the adults are behaving like Muslims, they're going to thrive, right? And the maths of it, right? The maths of it is that a man who is in a position to look after and nurture, provide and protect for more than one woman is obviously going to have, inshallah, statistically, more children, right? Those children have a larger support structure. If the adults are healthy, right? They have a bigger support structure. They have more of a village, okay? They have other sources of support aside from mum, okay? And this is a big thing, right? Because we are so used to now this postmodern situation where you and your husband and your children in your house most of the time, isolated from neighbors, isolated from community. Maybe you go to the masjid every Friday, maybe you see your family on the weekend, right? But if both adults are working, children are in childcare, and that's what they're relying on. If the mom is at home as a woman and as an adult, she's on her own pretty much most of the time with the kids, right? Trying to stay, trying to kind of keep them occupied, keep them entertained, keep them safe, do stuff for them, do stuff with them, keep the house going. No wonder sisters,
at the same
right?
time.
No, exactly, right. It's exactly. No wonder women, no wonder we're struggling. This was never the way that things were done before industrialization, right? Things weren't done this way. We didn't live these isolated lives and be expected to just handle it all. You had women around you. You would have your mum or your sister-in-law or your auntie or your own sister. There'd be the women of the community, and you guys would do things together. There was this community, it takes a village, right? So I don't know whether we're too far gone, but looking at the institution and problematizing any of the institutions, that's not the way forward, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us these options. He gave us these options. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't give options randomly. He gave an option because there is benefit in it, there is barakah in it, and there is a wisdom in it. So rather than problematizing the institution that you don't like, we should be looking at the individuals within the institution, because they are the ones that make it a success or a failure. Wallahu alam.
Exactly. I was going to ask something and go a little bit farther back when you were saying about, you were talking about healthy family. So one of my daughters she's married, and her husband was not raised in America, and she was. So we had to have this bubble in America because we don't have family or relatives that are Muslim. They might be smoking, drinking, whatever. So she was protected in her own bubble. So when she got into a Muslim family that was not part of her nuclear family, I said, you have to understand they're very tribal, very tribal people, and that's a healthy thing, although you're not used to that in your environment, because she was raised around people that she couldn't see all the time because they might be drinking or smoking or doing whatever. So she had to grow up in a place where we had to protect her, because these people might have these influences and she doesn't need to be around smoking and drinking and drug use. So the extent of who she had was within our own large family. However, when she got into a Muslim family, I said, okay, you can embrace a lot of this now because you have this extended family. Now, how important is it that we ourselves as women, and we're in the personal development, relationship wellness arena, how important is it, although we have this tribal mentality, to keep ourselves accountable for our own mental well-being within our marriages, within our family? Is it on the husband to fix it? Is it on us? And if everybody stayed long enough for this video, they kind of know the answer already. But I did want to talk about that. Although we're in families that are Muslim and that love us very much, how important is it for us as women to maintain our mental health and well-being within our families?
I think it's so funny to me that, you said, we're in families that are Muslim that love us very much. Girl, they're still human beings. They're still human beings, right? And human beings are messy, okay? Human beings are messy. We had a live stream where we were talking about mothers raising men. And we would sort of digging into the idea of, son husbands and sort of women, all sorts of things to do with, how mothers sometimes use their leverage over their sons to achieve certain things, certain personal gains, right? So we know that in our families that, people be messy. Okay, we know, right? Because they're human beings, okay, even Muslim families. However, my answer to your question is I feel as much as possible should be taking radical responsibility for our own mental state. Because we talk about men being in their frame, right? And being kind of, in a good, being in their frame. For women, one of the skills that I used to teach when I was coaching and that I found made such a huge difference was the ability to choose your state, right? How do you choose your state? choosing your thoughts. You know, we've all been Tony Robbins, you know that stuff, right? But that stuff is real, right? The ability to choose our thoughts and our thinking and our thought pattern is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. It's like a superpower. We get to decide the story that we're telling ourselves. And obviously the thinking is what produces the feelings, right? The emotions, and the emotions is what colors our experience of the world around us, right? So regardless of what situation you're in, monogamous, polygynous, you know, whatever the case may be, in your marriage, outside of your marriage, with regards to your children, extended family, whatever it is, sis, know that you have the power to choose your state, right? To decide how you're going to show up, to decide how you're going to interpret other people's actions, and choose to interpret their actions in a way that is productive, that's helpful, that gets you the outcome that you want, right? And not be in this victim mindset. Because a lot of the time, the conversations around polygyny, especially when it comes to the initial wife, she's the victim, he's the perpetrator, right? Sometimes the subsequent wife can get shade too. She's also seen as a perpetrator, right? But the initial wife is squarely in victim, she gets victim status, right? And people like that because, well, people feel sorry for them. They get attention, they get the sympathy, they get the empathy. But the reality is you are still somebody who has agency and who makes choices, and you will make choices every day. So it's not really helpful to you to kind of accept the label of victim and start playing that role as if, woe is me, it's not my fault, I had nothing to do with it, I did everything right, and he just went and X, Y, and Z, and now my life is, you know, is a mess, etc. That whole narrative, it just isn't helpful. And, you know, maybe one day we'll do a reaction to a couple of videos that have been on this topic. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that. I think that would be a lot of fun. But I do feel very strongly that, especially sisters in the community, we need to stop normalizing the extreme emotional response that some sisters have when their husband marries again.
We are also the authors of the new ebook, The Polygamy Roadmap. 2 different roadmaps, one specifically for men and the other
for women.
Naturally. So no matter where somebody is in their journey, whether they're considering it and what's required, especially men I'm talking to, I share the 5 requisites on really what it takes to build a healthy, successful polygynous family unit. So with that being said, make sure if you're a man and if you're serious, not just curious, you take action and get it today.
And in the women's polygamy roadmap, we talk about the different feelings that women might go through with emotions of fear, challenge, betrayal, jealousy.
Yes, and we give you some good insight as well as tips, anecdotes, as well as some of our stories of struggle in the polygamy roadmap too for women. And you will find out really how to have a type of confidence in yourself after reading this. I'm truly, truly in the mindset that you would anyway.
Indeed. So do what you got to do. And that means go to polygamyroadmap.com, grab your copy. We look forward to you benefiting from it and joining us in our private community. With that being said, Assalamu alaikum.
Peace.